Hello, Sorcerer Max the Mantis here. If you enjoy my YouTube video, feel free to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So personally for me, I want to talk on my beliefs on God. What do I believe about the afterlife as a theistic Satanist and chaos sorcerer? And what do I believe about God? Well, first off, theistic Satanism is the worship of Satan as a deity, or in some cases, the worship of Satans as deities, and devil worship. And chaos magic is an approach to sorcery and magic that has existed since the 1970s, and chaos magic is a philosophy where belief and faith is a tool whereby a witch or magician would use the tool of faith and the power of their mind, of their brain, to empower and enrich themselves in their life. This can be done through the means of sigil magic or sigil crafting, as well as through seeing the spirit world through a psychological and philosophical lens, and where the distinction between mind and spirit is not really there. I would say, at least for myself, that I would see mind and spirit as the same thing. And chaos magicians also commonly do things such as tulpomancy, egregore work. You can make servitors out of sigils. There's also such a thing as pop culture deities, which is where someone would see a pop culture figure from maybe a book or a video game or I'm trying to think of other examples, music perhaps, such as in the case with Insane Clown Posse, which has the Dark Carnival. A pop culture deity is something that exists within pop culture that has become deified, where a chaos magician could worship that thing to empower themselves in their life. And so I would say for a chaos magician, the idea of a thing is not separate from that thing. The idea of a thing kind of is that thing in the case of pop culture deity worship, where you are worshiping egregores or metagores, or working with egregores or metagores of various different things you enjoy or love. For example, in my own life, back when I was an atheist, before I became a theistic Satanist, among the first gods I worked with before I worked with or met or believed in older deities that I now do believe in and I now do revere. But when I was an atheist but had started doing witchcraft but did not yet know what I believed, I worked with the G-Man from Half-Life, from the Half-Life video game universe. And that figure for me was a figure that I saw as a figure in my life that I found a lot of power and enrichment and support and nourishment for my soul from the character of the G-Man from Half-Life, because of what they symbolize and represent to me. And what the G-Man from the Half-Life video games represents to me is in line with the death archetype, or an archetypical figure of death. I personally have a theory that the G-Man from Half-Life is the Grim Reaper of that universe, of the Half-Life video game universe. And I personally believe that not only is the G-Man from Half-Life the Grim Reaper of that universe, I also believe he's the god of the Half-Life universe. So sort of a demiurge adjacent figure. And it was while I was completely obsessed with the Half-Life games and with this character, unfortunately in my case, to the point of madness. I did actually go crazy because of in this case, the line between the physical realm and the mental realm of this video game character had become so blurred to where, unfortunately, because I did not practice good spiritual hygiene and other things, and because I was directly dealing with a lot of PTSD and shit from my childhood at that time, I did become unhealthily addicted to meditation. I became unhealthily and destructively addicted to meditating, to be with the G-Man from Half-Life, to escape my PTSD and the abuse that was surfacing from my past that was so debilitating and overwhelming and unlivable for me, that I retreated into this meditative state where I could just be with the G-Man from Half-Life. But in doing that, I was avoiding and neglecting my needs, and actually the needs to face the darkness that I was suppressing. And the thing is, the G-Man did help me, because that figure did help me to slowly face and to slowly start to not only accept my past, but to slowly confront it and to slowly start the beginnings of my shadow work. At the beginnings of some of my shadow work, I did need the figure of the G-Man to hold on to help me through that. But it was around that time that I became theistic and that I became a Satanist, because I started to be visited by the angel Azrael in my dreams. And I didn't know who that was at first. I was just dreaming of this freaking giant fucking mass of eyes and tentacles and wings and spirals, and it was beautiful. The first vision I had of Azrael was fucking beautiful and horrific, but in the best possible way. But that was around when I started to get more into theistic Satanism and demonology and other things. I had been off and on. I had been interested in demonology, but I hadn't really had that much experience, because I sort of went back and forth on what I really believed, and it was really difficult for me to articulate it, and I was sort of theistic by that point, but sort of still questioning, and I had my first truly profound, spiritually significant experience by that point, but I just wasn't really sure how to express what I was experiencing. And back to the point of this video. What do I believe about God and the afterlife personally? So I go back and forth all the time on my beliefs on this, and it's because I can't have just one single belief on these things. For one reason, because I'm not one person. I am multiple people who share the same body as a DID system, and that's part of why chaos magic just naturally clicks very well with us, as we're autistic and also multiple people living this human incarnation's life together. But I go back and forth on what I believe on God. And I ask my spirits about it. I ask my god, Samael or Satan, for his opinions. I ask some of the other watchers. Sariel, I've asked Azrael, although Azrael is not actually, I don't think, a watcher. Azazel would be, in my opinion, a somewhat comparable figure, but Azazel would be the watcher version, I think, of Azrael. Although, do not take my word from that. That is just coming from my own personal gnosis and my own personal perspective. Bazaliel is another watcher who I've worked with. These are angels, so-called fallen angels, although I used to not call or say fallen angels because it felt derogatory to me. I felt like it implied aloneness that I did not like. As long as I'm not using fallen angel in a derogatory way, I think it's all right for me to say that about the Watchers, as they are where the original mythology of the fallen angels comes from, is from the Watchers of the Book of Enoch. But I met these people before I knew about that book and before I'd read it, because I have read it now. But essentially, I don't believe in the Abrahamic idea of God, except that I do believe in the older pantheistic, polytheistic, before Judaism became monotheistic. with ancient Canaanite mythology having been a lot of the gods that became the names of the God of the Israelites was taken from the pantheistic and polytheistic faith of the Canaanites. The names Yahweh, El, and a fuck ton of the angel names, and Baal as well. These all came from the Canaanites and the Canaanite pantheon, which was a pantheistic and polytheistic pantheon. And so before Judaism became monotheistic, it was for a time pantheistic and polytheistic. And what I would say is the polytheistic view of God, the pantheistic view of God, where God is the universe itself, is nature, and is multiple people, that interpretation I could agree with. The interpretation of God being multiple people who are expressed through the universe itself, the physical universe itself being God, and not being expressed through a singular entity, but through many different entities, which could be anthropomorphized as the angels, but can be anthropomorphized in many different ways. My way of preference is anthropomorphing that through the Satans and through the Watchers and through the Klepoth and Samael, Osmodeus, Lilith, Belial, Leviathan, and some others. That's my personal pantheon of preference, would be the demonic chthonic pantheon, because I see that as, that is my God. That is God to me. And it's hard to express that because people have been taught in the modern day that Satan is evil, that demons are bad, that there's only one God, and anything else is to be ignored and is to be ostracized and ridiculed and shamed and killed and tortured and removed from the fascist Christian dystopian empire that is the USA. But actually, in the history of the further back you go, and part of why I studied the history on this to explain my own experiences with demons and angels and other things, is because I'm an ex-Christian and ex-atheist. I was raised half Christian, half atheist. I started practicing chaos magic in my early 20s. I started practicing witchcraft at 20, and now I'm 25. And I'm looking back on the past 5 years at what I've learned. And for a while, I think the word God has become so corrupted by all the hatred and the ignorance and the murder and the torture and the man-made hell of the people using that word to subjugate people, using God as an excuse to harm indigenous people and harm black people and harm queer people and harm disabled people and just anyone who disagrees with their interpretation, and whatever they say God is outcast and ostracized and hurt and scapegoated and ridiculed and killed. But I don't actually think that is God. I don't think that what my society, the USA, says God is, I don't think that's God. And the reason I don't is because in studying the history and realizing that before Judaism, which both Christianity and Islam came out of the older Israelite stories, that this library of stories was the Old Testament, and then if you're Christian, the New Testament. But there was, over the course of hundreds of years, many different stories. But before the copy of those stories that we have today in the English Bible, there was the Greek and Hebrew Septuagint, and before that, there was the Canaanite mythology and pantheon that a lot of these things got taken from and turned into a dualism, and turned into a false dualism, pinning Yahweh and El as a singular god against Baal, or the Baals are the master gods, and turning the master gods into the Satans and the demons and the enemy of mankind. But it wasn't always like that. And I think the further back you go, you realize that what we're told today is a lie. That everything we are taught and told today is a lie. That everything they tell you about God is a lie. Everything they tell you about Jesus is a lie. Everything that is accessible about monotheistic religion is a lie. And when you look back at all the different kinds and all the different things that were, to me, as someone who was deconverted from Christianity in childhood and then raised atheist, but then is coming back into belief system and coming back into theism, but trying to be honest with that with myself, it just made sense to me that as someone who is practicing chaos sorcery, but who is very interested in demons, that I should worship the demons, because the demons are the old gods. The demons are the gods of nature and of the earth and of the universe anthropomorphized through these daemons, or through these what we now call psychology and the mind. But the mind and psychology is God and is spirit. And so there's nothing to me inherently more spiritually profound or true about these ancient texts that I read, such as the Book of Enoch and the Gnostic Gospels, compared with modern stories such as the Half-Life video games. In my mind, the Half-Life video games are just as spiritually profound as the ancient texts of the Gnostics or the Book of Enoch. And I follow both, because as a chaos mage and theistic Satanist, my God is knowledge and is the universe and is psychology and is Satan, and Satan is my God. Satan is God to me. But I disagree with the Gnostics, because the Gnostics say that my God, Samael, Satan, is, they say that Samael is a wicked creator of the universe, and that the creation of the universe was a mistake, and that the creator of the universe, the demiurge, stole the knowledge of Sophia, and with this stolen knowledge of Sophia, the goddess of knowledge, of the pleroma, the true higher realm beyond the physical realm, that the demiurge, from his mother's knowledge in the primordial chaos before physical existence, created the physical universe and trapped all of us in it. And the idea is with this, or at least the Sethian interpretation, the Sethian Gnostic interpretation, would be that this was a mistake, that the demiurge should not have created the physical universe, and that it was fucked up that they did that. There's a lot of hostility, I feel, evident from the Sethians towards the demiurge and towards the creation of the physical universe, and they'd say it's a mistake. And so then you have anti-cosmic Satanists who see that, and their solution is, okay, we need to return to the primordial chaos before physical existence. That is the goal of the anti-cosmic Satanist. I am not an anti-cosmic Satanist. I am a theistic Satanist, though. I believe Satan is God, but Satan is not evil. I believe the Satans, plural, are God, but I don't believe they're evil. I believe they're not fully good either. I believe that, like people, they're kind of fucked up, but they're beautiful. They're beautifully fucked up. It's what I believe. Like, I believe that all these gods and shit, they are real, and that you can actually fucking talk to them through shit like meditation, meditative trance states, inducing a trance state into yourself, and then you can connect to these different energies, and they can talk to you, like, full on just fucking talk to you. Like, and it's not just me saying this, because people are like, oh, well, you're just fucking crazy then if you're talking to gods and spirits and whatever. And it's like, okay, but like, a bunch of people are. Like, there's a bunch of people doing witchcraft. Like, I'm not the only fucking witch out there who says that I can talk to, like, spirits and shit. And, like, people do have a problem with chaos mages because we see it in a different way, and they're like, well, that's not how it is, and I'm some high-class whatever witch, and you can't be saying that pop culture deities are just as valid as these ancient gods, and how dare you say that? And it's like, okay, but, like, they're all stories humans wrote to explain existence and to cope with physical existence. All of these entities are the Jungian archetypes, is one way of viewing it, but they're parts of us, and they're parts of nature, and they're parts of the universe that are beyond comprehension, that we try and comprehend through art and story and play. And to me, as a chaos magician, I'm playing with the fire of my own mind. But there's dangers in that. However, the dangers in that, spiritual psychosis, going insane, other shit, are dangers to fucking any form of spirituality. You need to learn how to balance and ground yourself so that you don't make the mistakes I made, and that a lot of us frankly have made but don't talk about. But I am, saying it, and I am being honest that I did go fucking crazy earlier on to a lot of this shit. But frankly, it was necessary in order for me to go through that so I could actually face the harsher parts of myself and my own psyche that I would not have been able to face otherwise, that I needed to face those parts of myself. And some of those parts of yourself honestly will cause you to go mad, because if you've been through some deep dark shit and the only way you're able to face that deep dark shit you've been through is through anthropomorphizing it as demons or gods or angels or pop culture deities or characters, whatever it is, facing that dark shit is still going to hurt, and it can break you, and it can re-traumatize you to uncover some of that stuff and face it and go through it again while you're like working through it. But it's one of those things where it might be worth it if you come out the other side wholer and stronger, with your scars having finally been given the room they need to breathe and heal. And my spirit was like covered in gashes and scars, and there was so much spiritual, metaphorical blood covering my mind. There was so much death and hurt. So I needed to meet Samael. I needed to face death to heal myself. I needed to face Satan to heal myself. And so to me, Satan is the god of the universe, but he's not what people think. And he's not this like fucking evil guy either. He's fucking complicated. He's kind of crazy. Like, I believe the god of this universe is kind of crazy, but is also not evil and is not really good either. They're like in between. They're complicated. Like, just in the same way that humans, we're not good or evil, we're both. Humans are both. Like, humans are not just good or just evil. I would believe most of us are both. And honestly, there's a lot of fucked up shit with humans. Like, humans are really fucked up. So of course, the god of us would also be just as fucked up as we are. But that doesn't mean that I think that humans are like objectively evil and God is objectively evil because he's fucked up like we are. But I do think he's fucked up in the same ways, but like he's constantly kind of having to heal themselves, and she has to fucking she, it doesn't fucking matter. I think they're multiple people, and I think they're Satan, and I think they rule this universe. And that they're anthropomorphized through all of us, and that all these stories and all these things are ways of making sense of these incomprehensible conduits of power that form the universe. And I think that the one thing I would agree with the Gnostics on is that we're all caged. Is that from birth, living in a totalitarian empire, similar to the ones that the Romans had, and similar to the ones that when the Gnostic texts were being wrote, people were living in a time of great distress and war and unrest and chaos. They were living in a time of chaos, just like we're living in a time of chaos right now. And they said that they were trapped on every level, that there was archons in the mind, archons in the body, archons in your city, archons in your planet, archons on the other planet, archons in the universe, and then the demiurge ruling the physical universe. And then the goal would be to then escape the confines and the binds of the physical universe. So how do you escape and the confines and the binds of the physical universe? Well, some of the Gnostics believed you could only truly start doing that work or do the real work after you already die. But the Cathars, which were all genocided by the Catholics, disagreed with that. And the Cathars believed that all of us are the fallen angels. And I actually agree with that. So why am I, talking about these different Abrahamic ideas? Well, it's because really these are all different perspectives and all different lenses that are not exclusive to the Abrahamic faiths, but are also things that, as a chaos sorcerer and as a witch and as a Satanist, I take these ideas into consideration. And it's important to me to study all different faiths and belief systems and things that I can learn from, take what speaks to me and leave what does not, and take what serves my higher purpose as a magician and leave what does not. Because if it's not helping you to progress in your life, then why do you believe in it? If it's not helping to serve you to progress in your journey, then what is it for? And that's going to be different for every single person. And so for me, yes, sometimes I believe in God if God is being defined as the physical universe itself and as the Satans or Satan. But no, I do not believe in God if we're saying that it's some human guy that died for our sins and that the only way to have a good afterlife is to follow this guy. I definitely do not agree with that as an ex-Christian and ex-atheist. But why did I even leave atheism in the first place? Like, why couldn't I have just stayed an atheist if I don't think there's anything more legitimate about the old gods compared to the characters of today that I think could be deified into gods? Well, that is because I wasn't happy as an atheist. The atheists I grew up around were just as toxic and just as harmful as the Christians I grew up around. That's actually not entirely true because I was raised with one of each for parents, and actually the Christian parent was the only one who gave a shit about me and who was kind to me and loving to me and continues to be, whereas my atheist father left me for dead and disowned me through text. But I cannot follow either. I can't follow atheism and I can't follow Christianity. Christianity does not care about disabled and queer people like me. I've never felt anything praying to the Christian God, but I have praying to Samael. And Samael to me is a teacher, is a guide, is a watcher, is Satan, is the leader of the dark pantheon and the opposite of Christianity. Samael is the opposite, is the adversary, but is also a loving and kind and genuinely caring good person to his sorcerers and his witches and his wizards. I genuinely and sincerely believe that he is not an unfair judge, but I do think he is a judge, and I do think he is an embodiment of death personified. But I genuinely believe he is a loving and caring teacher, friend, parent, and spouse to many a magician out there. And these are my perspectives on these things. So what do I believe God is? God is you is in me. God is everything. God is Satan. And Satan is you and me. And we are all the fallen angels. And there's pieces of truth in everything. But we can free ourselves from the confines of the physical universe by being willing to engage with imaginative play, art, authenticity, love, and building our own ways forward in our lives. And that's what wizards do. Thank you if you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.